Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, 1791, the year he died, he wrote the Magic Flute. And it was right at the end of his great career, only 35 years of his life. And the first thing you will notice is 3 chords in the whole orchestra. A chord, and then ba-bam, and then a third chord. And the chord, the number 3, are the mystical symbols, symbolic number of the Masons. He was a Mason. And there are several other little things that you may or may not notice. In the middle of the overture, it stops, and suddenly there are 3 chords. And that represents the priests who are like Masons, with the values of the Masons. Mozart and Haydn and many other people in those days were members of the Masons, and this was the way they represented it. There are also 3 trombones in the orchestra, which is very unusual because they don't appear in any of the other works, but they do appear symbolically in this, and they play an important role. There are also 3 flats in the key of E flat major. Now, there's a little bit of esoterica for those who know music and who are trained. That was the key that Mozart naturally turned to represent the Masons. So the opera is a Masonic opera, but what really Mozart brought into the world is joy. And this piece is bubbling with joy. It is irrepressibly joyful. It has a short introduction, an adagio, and then an allegro. And the allegro movement goes back and forth between seriousness and cheerfulness in about equal measure. The seriousness comes from the fact that there is a fugue. So this theme is followed by. So a fugue is a serious thing by its very nature, and immediately we're in a serious world. And it's humorous because it has some funny little accents, which is very comic. And so those 2 sides to the opera are brought out in the overture. After the 3 chords appear in the middle, the texture becomes more complex, and it's Mozart's art at the highest level, complex, and the end is extremely cheerful. Now, I want to say one thing about Mozart and the way we play Mozart nowadays. It's changed a lot. In the old days, there was a large orchestra and everything was played in a very grand and big way. And then came a period in which we're still in the middle of, which was very much more conscious of what it would have sounded like in Mozart's time. And that means a much smaller orchestra and generally much faster tempi. And that's the way we do Mozart now, light, fast, with a very small orchestra. We're playing tonight with a very big orchestra. And day before yesterday, this is a little secret amongst ourselves, I listened to a performance of this opera conducted by Klemperer, Otto Klemperer. And I was amazed, stunned, and moved by the way he played the music. He plays it with a big orchestra, and he plays it at quite a slow tempo. And I was a little shocked at first, and then as I listened more, I thought, that's the way we should play Mozart. Now, there's no rule about it. There's no police who's going to come in and stop us in the middle if we're playing at a slow tempo. The orchestra was rather shocked when we started, but by the end they were saying, my goodness, this really sounds grand. And so that's what you're going to hear tonight, a Klemperer-like performance. And we have 7 basses and 12 cellos and a big, big orchestra. And if you feel superbly joyful at the end, then we've done our task, which is to bring Mozart's attitude to life. And actually, that was his genius. He had an absolute inability to be depressed. He simply could not be depressed, whatever happened. He would always find a joyful way of expressing it. If very few people attended a concert, he still considered it a huge triumph. And at the end of his short life, I know there was one occasion when he wrote, I'm looking for it, he said, "My concert was a splendid success from the point of view of honor and glory, but a disaster as far as money was concerned." But I was in such good form, they implored me to give another concert next Sunday. So he had a way of being, he was almost pathologically optimistic. Failure and defeat were simply not in his vocabulary. And I think that's quite a wonderful thing. And I believe it's true to say that at the end of his short life, which was 35 years, and after he'd suffered from the death of 4 children and serious illness and repeated professional and financial disasters, his optimism actually rose. So that's a phenomenal fact. And I have a word for it. I call it Amadeity. It's rather nice. And I perpetrate our Amadeity on other people. I think it's a good way to welcome you to the 41st season. Mozart is a gift that keeps on and on and on giving and always will. And I say, let's have a year of Amadeity. So that's the way to begin our season.